This magic book on the outside is just an ordinary low-level book, but anyone who accidentally reads it can become a legendary archmage, because inside this book holds all the knowledge of magic throughout the eternal realm. Even forbidden spells or ancient magic are just a few small commands when contained within this book. But if someone wants to use it to copy types of magic that the owner does not know, then the price that person has to pay for this book is extremely high. But how the hell did Grimm transmigrate into this book? He was originally an outstanding office worker in modern times. After decades of accumulating savings, he had a huge account balance. The young man had just planned to quit his job to enjoy this money when the author immediately concluded with a capitalist saying, "Quitting work only leads to death." Immediately, the young man was kissed by a truck kun flying over, sending him to heaven. After opening his eyes, he found himself transformed into a sentient book. Okay, that's enough of the brief introduction. Let's get straight into Chapter 1. In a world where a series of talented magic users appeared like Ian Shiskin, Sherdian Sokolov, Cromwell Stingwood, Dmitry Kashin Matafa Herrick. These were the archmages who left their mark on the history of magic. The focus shifts to the people learning and teaching magic, the apprentices who studied the doctrines established by these individuals. Time flows towards magical artifacts like books. Even those who do not walk the path of magic learn about their history and achievements. Powerful rays of light appeared for centuries. Their existence elevated the status of the empire. People called them the heroes of the empire. In the Royal Library of Renel Mid Academy, a place that looked extremely luxurious and smelled strongly of knowledge. That person's eyes glanced at the people sitting and reading, saying, "Heroes my ass." Then they glanced at the people standing on the other side, saying, "Heroes sages," leaving their mark on the history of magic, just incompetent fools. Those eyes then glanced at a young man taking a book, thinking becoming an archmage is so difficult. How much longer do I have to learn about these idiots? The vision ends behind the intertwined books. The voice of something within the bookshelf rang out, but anyway, what's the problem? A book, among thousands of books, seemed to be glowing. It said, "Now anyone, can I just want someone to..." The book began to recall the scene when it opened its eyes again. The scene of a man about to face a runaway car appeared, and then I became Grimoa in another world. On the ground, blood splattered everywhere, along with a faint glimmer of light. A Grimoa filled with amazing magical knowledge at that time. He transmigrated into a magic book, he said. At first I was quite confused. On the table, full of papers and books, there was a glowing book that could talk. Grimm said, "You turned into a book. What the hell?" Grimm thought in this life I might still find something interesting to do. He began to think about the books that always appeared with the archmages, but finally concluded that it was to nurture mages. Grimm said nurturing a special mage is not difficult, they just need to open me up. A curious teenager opened the book. A strong golden light appeared. The boy holding the book was also dumbfounded, surprised by the power emanating from the book, Grimm, and read they would gain magical knowledge. In front of the boy was a three-headed purple serpent, each head with 4 extremely ferocious eyes, opening its mouth and advancing towards the young man in front. The snake hissed, preparing to bite down on the person holding Grimm in their hand. Then the long-haired, brown-haired young man began to cast magic. He put his hand out, creating a golden magic circle, and said, "Fireball." After the words, a fireball, although not large, was extremely powerful, piercing straight through the serpent, turning it into fragments. The long-haired, brown-haired young man looked at the scene before him and asked, "How do you see it? Master, did I do well?" Grimm appeared and slapped the young man's face, saying, "You idiot." Grimm held in the young man's hand, scolded, "You can't cast spells like that," causing his student to be extremely confused. The student said, I'm sorry." Grimm recalled that it didn't appear Grimm thought about the unlucky students it had taken in anyway with the theories engraved on its body. The first was a girl casting a spell with a resigned expression, listening to Grimm scolding, "How many times do I have to tell you before you understand?" Then, as someone who understood instinctively, the next apprentice, Teo, was a long-haired girl whose expression was also resigned to the torment of being scolded by Grimm, someone who understood them instinctively. Grimm said to himself, "Over thousands of years I have trained countless disciples." It began to imagine the scene of itself as a book acclaimed by all mages and felt very relieved. And now the scene returns to the present. Grimm is placed among other books, wondering, why am I languishing here like this? It recalled the scene of its old students each time the previous owner died. What's the point of me returning to this cycle? Grim, amidst the pile of books on the shelf, said, "The last time I nurtured a mage was 300 years ago, damn it. I just want to nurture mages, someone please read me." It looked at the pile of books in front of it and cursed Hayes really. "Hey, I said read me, you bastards." It was shouting in vain when suddenly a young man walked by, causing Grim to be slightly surprised and let out a sound. The young man carrying a high stack of books raised his hand to take a book, saying, "Let's see." The young man looked around the bookshelf, saying as if he were a librarian, "It's around here somewhere." After speaking, the young man hugged the stack of books and walked away before Grim's eyes. Grim looked at him. There's someone there. Then the young man suddenly walked away. Grim angrily said, "Hey, look over here." But unfortunately, the young man didn't hear Grim's words, so he walked away. Grim thought to itself, "Of course they can't hear me. Only those who have signed a contract or come into contact with me can hear my voice. That kid couldn't possibly hear my cries." Just as it finished thinking, a hand took Grim off the bookshelf. The young man from before held Grim in his hand, looked at it and said, "Huh, did I just hear something around here?" Then the young man silently looked at Grim for a moment. Grim in the young man's hand unexpectedly muttered to itself, "No time for this, calm down and get your voice back." Then Grim spoke its youthful voice, startling the young man, The young man turned his head repeatedly, searching for the source of the voice. He fearfully said, Who are you? Where are you calling me from?" Light shone into the young man's eyes. Grim said, "Young man, I am here." The young man looked at the book he was holding, heard it say, "My name is Grimoa, the legendary Grim." The young man looked at Grim in utter surprise, dropping the stack of books in his hands. Saying a talking book, Grim urged, "Hurry up, flip the cover open." The young man obeyed Grim's words and opened. Grim a dazzling light, like the light of knowledge, appeared, causing the young man to gape. Grim said, "If you follow me, you will." Some pages in the book fluttered wildly. The young man seemed to be transported to another dimension. Images of the young man flying everywhere appeared. Grim said, "Surpass the level of a low-level apprentice mage, intermediate mage and high-level mage, and then become an archmage." The young man subconsciously squatted down, saying, What is this?" The young man sat down on the ground, holding Grim up with both hands. Grim said, "What you just saw is the vision of what will happen if you join me on this journey." Grim, held in the young man's hand, continued, "Your astronomical magical talent will blossom. Thanks to me, you will become an archmage remembered throughout history." But in fact, deep down, Grim thought, of course, this is completely absurd. It looked at the young man, who was looking at it with an admiring expression, and thought, this kid doesn't have any magical potential at all. This is just a sweet story for him to read me, but I'm not lying about turning him into an archmage. The young man looked at Grim in his hand and said, but... Then he looked at Grim and said, "I don't want to be a mage." Grim was stunned. What? It started to sweat a few drops, confused, saying, Reconsider, young man. I can make you the greatest archmage you know." The young man put a hand to his chin, thought, and said, I still don't want to because I... The young man pointed to the sky, thinking of the scene of himself as a skilled knight, saying, "Want to become a knight, Grim?" Hearing this, was discouraged and didn't want to speak. Grim asked, "Hey, what's your name?" The young man replied, "My name is China Usbia." Then Grim said, "That's right, China Usbia magic suits you better than a sword." China looked at Grim in his hand suspiciously and asked, "How do you know?" Grim replied, "I've always been watching you." China asked, "Again, didn't we just meet?" Grim described the scene of China as a magic knight in the future, saying, "Ah, well, I've been watching you for a long time, a magic swordsman. Being a magic swordsman, using a sword with one hand and magic with the other, right?" China was stunned for a moment and then said, a magic swordsman." China's eyes lit up as he looked at Grim, saying, "That sounds pretty cool." Grim said, "Good, very good." Next, Grim said, "Then open my cover and I will turn you into a legendary mage." "Ah, no, a magic swordsman, right?" China quickly replied, "Yes." China followed Grim's instructions. Grim thought to itself, finally. A magic circle suddenly appeared, emitting a strong light, surprising China. Whoa. In the air, a mark appeared from those lights. On Grim's pages, a similar mark also appeared. Grim said, granting authority to the owner. Signing a binding contract with the owner until their death, that mark had appeared on the back of China's hand. Grim said, "The lonely wait of 300 years has ended my journey to nurture a mage China, and Grim have successfully signed the contract and now it begins once more. Grim in China's hand said cheerfully, "Excellent, it's done." Grim continued, "Finally, I've done it too." China smiled slightly, looking at Grim, thinking his tone seems to have changed. Grim said, "Finally escaped this damn bookshelf at this moment." China looked a little hesitant, as if wanting to say something. China then said to Grimoa, "I've been thinking again, I really don't think I can do magic." China scratched his head and laughed, saying, "To be honest, I come from a family of knights. I don't want to be disowned by my family. I'm really sorry." Grim was still being held by China, it said, "Come on," making China a little embarrassed. Grim angrily wrinkled its pages and scolded, "So what if you get kicked out of the house? It's not a big deal, are you, that afraid of your father, afraid of getting beaten for learning magic?" China stammered, "Yes, it's a bit." "Well, yes it is." Grim didn't bother listening to China and continued to scold him. "If you learn magic from me, you'll be 10 times stronger than your father. Your father wants to marry you off, then use magic on him. That's it." China heard this and asked back, Why would I attack my father?" Grim thought to itself, 300 years, and China seems very afraid when his father is mentioned, a little hesitant. My father is not an easy person to persuade. Grim thought to itself, it's been a full 300 years, I've waited so long. Only to get nothing, China hurriedly raised his hand to explain to Grim, I'll introduce another student from the academy to you. Okay, you just need to make a new contract. Grim, hearing this, felt utterly disappointed and lifeless. Grim flatly replied no. China asked what. Grim angrily wrinkled its pages and said, "No means no. No way am I accepting this brat. Once a contract is made, a new one can't be made until the current owner dies." Grim continued to scold China, "You damn brat, why are you only talking about this now? Make the contract or do nothing." China could only say. China could only stammer, "I'm sorry." But Grim scolded, "Sorry is sorry enough, you worthless piece of trash. You're actually going to become a knight." Sweat began to appear on China's face. He said, "I'm really sorry. It's my fault for not thinking it through. I'm truly sorry." Then China's eyes suddenly changed, veins popping out on his face. China looked straight at Grim, pointed, and cursed back, "You crazy Grimoa! What right do you have to curse me?" China gripped Grim tightly in both hands, saying, "First, it was you who forced me to sign the contract. A piece of paper dares to criticize a knight." Grim said, "Wait, what?" Before Grim could finish speaking, China interrupted, "This ends here." China placed Grim back on the bookshelf. China looked at Grim with hateful eyes, frowning as he said, "You said you've been on the bookshelf for 300 years, right? Well, that's just fine if you've lived for 300 years. Surely you can wait until I die, can't you?" Grim cursed from the bookshelf, "You dog, you can't treat me like this." China didn't bother listening, turned and left, saying goodbye. "I hope you find another contractor after I'm gone." Grim thought to itself, "Calm down, use the power of the authority to force him." Grim cast a spell on the bookshelf and said, "Stop, stop. I'm going to use the authority to say this." China just ignored Grim's cries and continued to walk. He said, "What else do you want to say?" Grim thought to itself, "Crap, I'm dead. My authority isn't working." Grim thought on the bookshelf, "Do I really have to wait until that brat dies?" Grim on the bookshelf continuously muttered curses, "Nothing at all, just die, go die." Grim's body protruded slightly from the shelf. It said, "Just smash your head on the ground and die already." Grim looked towards China walking away and cursed, "Die, you coward." As if in response to Grim's wish, China, who was walking, suddenly slipped on a piece of paper. China fell forward in surprise. His glasses also fell off. A loud thud echoed, then it quickly ended. Grim on the shelf silently observed. Papers flew everywhere, then fell beside a puddle of blood. Grim, China slipped, fell, and hit his head on the ground, dying, just as Grim had said. What's more, he died with his eyes open. Grim was puzzled, Half a day later, his body was discovered. A girl entering the library came across China's corpse lying on the ground. She was so surprised that she covered her mouth with both hands. Blood was still splattered all over the floor and white paper. The body was quickly taken away. The library at late night was truly silent. The clock struck nearly 8 p.m. Grim, lonely on the bookshelf, said, "I thought I'd finally escaped this boring place." It immediately thought of China. Of course, it's a pity he died so young, but this has erased 300 years of waiting. Grim sighed. "Well, okay, since the contractor has died, I'll move on to another chapter soon." Grim wondered, where will I be transported to today? Grim thought another library, a grand palace library. Then it thought of a dark place full of rats, maybe a stinking slum underground. then to a crowded street or maybe a dilapidated bookshelf in some market. The clock struck 8 p.m. Grim said hopefully somewhere better than this place. In the silent space, footsteps were heard. A student had secretly broken into the library. Grim wondered, Looking towards the empty space leading to the door, it wondered who else would come at this late hour. Above at the door, a sound appeared. Grim thought not the sound of a key. On the other side of the door, a hand was trying to pry open the lock. Grim immediately realized someone was picking the lock. Grim on the bookshelf asked a thief. The lock-picking skills looked like those of an ordinary thief. The library door was opened, and the person entered. That person's hand tightly gripped one side of their robe. A young man with white hair and a black cloak silently opened the door and stepped inside. Grim saw him and exclaimed, "A student." Grim said helplessly, "On the shelf is this academy, a breeding ground for lunatics, one wielding a sword without resolve, and now a thief." Actually, in Grim's heart, no matter what, the student walked cautiously and carefully. Grim thought no one would sneak around here at this hour just for fun. The student walked around the library looking left and right as if searching for something. Grim asked, looking for something. The student continued to walk past the bookshelves, carefully examining them. Among the books, Grim seemed to realize something. Oh, could it be? The student walked past the shelf where Grim was using their hand to hold their cloak's hood tightly. Their face showed some discomfort and impatience as they said, "Grimoa, where are you?" Grim wondered, are they looking for me? Grim subtly vibrated, creating a sound on the shelf to attract attention. Grim muttered, "I'll be transported somewhere else in a minute. The clock has already struck 11:59 p.m. Grim tried its best to struggle on the shelf, saying, hey, over here." It still tried its best to call out to the student who was facing the bookshelf on the other side, "Almost there, please come here." But unfortunately, the student couldn't hear. Still, Grim didn't give up. "Over here, this way." The student suddenly sensed something. Grim continued to call, "Please." As if having heard Grim's call read me, the student turned their face. Their gaze went directly towards the bookshelf in front where Grim was. The student seemed to be drawn by something slowly turning their body. The student quickly walked forward. Seeing this, Grim exerted itself and said, "Yes, that's right." The golden light appeared once more. The student's hand gradually touched Grim. Grim said quickly, "Hurry up, just open the book." The clock chimed, marking midnight. Grim thought, 300 years have passed since I fell into the Royal Academy. The student's black cloak hood fell, revealing their entire baby-faced features. They sighed. Ugh, Grim thought, exactly 109,561 days. On the student's hand, the glowing contract mark appeared brightly. Grim said, the first time in a cycle. The student sat down on the ground, holding Grim in their hands, looking at Grim with a dazed expression. Golden light still shone brightly all around. Grim said, "I've met the second contractor." Moonlight shone into the academy. The student placed Grim on their lap and leaned against the bookshelf, sighing. Grim looked at the student and said, "This girl." Then it thought of the academy's advanced security system. She actually got all the way here, without being detected by the magic surveillance devices and also avoiding the guards outside. The open pages began to glow. The girl, her attention drawn by the light from Grim, looked down. The book floated up, and Grim's human form appeared in the stream of light. It crossed its arms. Grim frowned and looked at the girl, asking, "Hey kid, what's your name?" The girl, without questioning or hesitating, replied, "Riley, my name is Riley." Grim, still with its arms crossed in front of Riley, asked, "All right, Riley, what is your family name?" Riley, holding the book in her hands, looked up at Grim and replied, "I don't have one. I don't have a family name," Grim said in surprise. What Grim, still facing Riley, looked at her and said, "All right, then next." It moved closer, leaned down to look at Riley and said, "How did you know I was in this library? It seems, I'll disappear after today." It recalled the moment Riley turned her head, then walked on, and in the final moments, she had even heard its voice. It said, remembering cases of people who might have telepathy, "My voice is telepathic, so only those who have made a contract or have a pact with me can hear it, unless this girl is a creature sensitive to magic, like a dragon or a spirit." Grim said, and yet a mere novice in the academy, then looked down at the girl with an innocent look on her face, holding the book in front of her, can identify such complex fluctuating magic. Riley replied, "I don't know," causing Grim to be confused and say, "Huh?" Riley looked down at the book she was holding and said, It's just that I heard your voice without even realizing it. Grim said what? Riley recalled the morning when she passed by a group of people and heard something she said. I heard about the incident in the library while wandering around. Then I heard some mages whispering something grim. Hearing this, said, I thought I could finally escape this boring place. It seems the heavens are angry, damn it. Riley looked at the panicked students in front and curiosity arose. Grim, resting its chin on its hand, squinted and thought she just accidentally heard me. Sounds a bit ridiculous. Grim then thought, could it be that this kid was born with a magical connection like dragons and spirits? No images of mighty dragons flying in the sky appeared. Below were spirits happily laughing, fluttering around. Grim squinted, thinking that's not impossible. An image of Riley with a strong magical aura in her hands appeared. Grim thought, besides humans, there's a small possibility she possesses latent power skills. And it thought of the scene of Riley truly having a vast latent power, then wondered what it would be like if this girl really possessed such things. Then Grim thought of the images of other great mages saying, following my principles, she could become a supreme mage. Grim pointed a finger at Riley's nose, startling her slightly, and said, all right, now I understand, Riley, let me introduce myself. Grim kept its finger on Riley's nose, then confidently and loudly said, I am the Archmage Grimoa. I will turn you into a supreme mage. A hand struck a match and lit a candle. Grim behind turned to look at Riley and said, so this is the dormitory you live in. There are 5 beds in the room, but you're the only one here. Why, Riley used her hand to shield the candle flame from going out and replied, my other roommates have gone home for the holidays. Grim replied, I see, what about you then? Riley lowered her head, closed her eyes, and said, didn't I already say I don't have a family name? Grim, hearing this, also fell silent in its heart. It thought even commoners have family names, not having one means. Riley glanced sideways, hearing Grim say, could you explain further? I will be guiding you from now on, so I need to know more about you. Riley replied, I understand. Riley's pupils, partially hidden by her bangs, showed the shadows of men. She recounted, when I reached the age where I could discern right from wrong. I became a member of a gang of thieves. Young Riley's eyes briefly glanced at the money pouch held by the person next to her. She continued, I don't have a name, and the people in the group called me Tool Number 2. Grim asked, puzzled, Number 2. Riley replied, yes, the kid who joined before me was Number 1, and I was Number 2. That friend was also in the same situation as me. She, along with another child, both looking scruffy, stood amidst a crowd of people. Riley continued to them, we were just tools, so we just worked. Then she recounted the scenes where she had to pick locks on chests and obey the words of those bad people. The poor little girl was forced to do those things just to receive a few meager gold coins. Riley said I lived each day by following orders. In the room with only the 2 of them and the candlelight, Riley crossed her arms and faced Grim, saying, but well, a gang of thieves is never a good place, right? She recalled her childhood vision of being exploited by bad people, saying at some point their gazes towards me changed. A bloody scene appeared, the ground littered with blood-stained arms. Along it were the footprints of young Riley fleeing, she said. To set an example, I killed a few of them, so they would never dare to do that again. But it doesn't matter how many I dealt with, these guys never learned their lesson. What else could I do after that? I escaped from the gang. Grim, now in spirit form, leaned on one hand, frowning, and said, then everything is clear. Grim said you unexpectedly met a mage on the road, and she recognized your talent and enrolled you in the academy. Riley met a red-haired girl who offered her help. Riley replied, that's right. Grim recalled the moment Riley picked the lock on the library door, thinking, she used to be in a gang of thieves. That explains why she could sneak into the library, and the image of Riley secretly wandering around the dimly lit library. Grim sat leaning on its hand, floating in the air, looking down at Riley, and said, wait a minute, aren't you a special student? Don't you have any problems with school violence at the academy? Riley glanced at Grim and said, I used to, but it's better now. Riley continued, a friend named Michael from the Baloric family helped me. Grim sat back annoyed and replied casually, all right, I understand. It thought I didn't even know such a family existed. Grim moved forward, stood in front of Riley, extended its hand, and said with a smile, well then, let's do our best from now on. I will definitely help you become a legendary supreme mage. Riley looked at Grim and happily replied, I'm really looking forward to working with you. Just as she was speaking, There was a very loud banging on the door, along with a voice shouting, "Hey, Riley, open the door." Riley and Grim slapped hands. The two of them turned their heads towards the door full of questions. The cursing voice outside the door rang out again. "Do you know where we had to sleep last night just because of you?" Grim looked at Riley confused and asked, Didn't you say your roommates went home for the holidays?" Riley could only remain silent outside the door. The cursing voice rang out again. "Why did you lock the door?" Grim's glance towards Riley became even more stern. It asked, "Are you being bullied?" Riley calmly glanced at Grim and replied, "Yes." Grim continued, "What about that friend, Michael?" Riley replied, "That was a lie." Grim was stunned. What? The tightly closed door from before suddenly burst open. 3 girls with blonde, pink, and blue hair stormed in with extremely angry expressions, saying, "Open the door." The next morning, the light of dawn shone into the academy. Riley lay sprawled on the ground in front of Grim, with 3 very large bumps on her head, which were even smoking. She cried out in pain, "Ugh!" Grim looked down at her and asked, "Are you all right?" Then Riley immediately got up, not paying attention to the 2 bumps on her head, and calmly replied, "I'm fine." How much could it hurt to be hit by someone raised like a delicate flower in a greenhouse? Grim saw this, lowered its head, sighed, and said, "Yeah, whatever. But, considering your personality, why did you just take the beating?" Riley replied, "They are all nobles. If I get into trouble with them, I'll be suspended." Grim sighed, looking down at Riley, and said, "Considering you already have very little time to study with me in the academy. If those brats keep getting in the way, how can you learn magic?" Riley, who was getting up after hearing Grim's words, suddenly froze. She looked at Grim and asked, "So what should I do?" Grim crossed its arms and replied, "There are 2 choices." It remained standing looking at Riley, and said, "1 is to accept this kind of life while learning magic from me. 2 is to leave the academy." Riley moved closer to Grim and looked at it, saying, "There's no choice in either of those." Grim replied, "Well, it still depends on your choice." Grim said a life of oppression, but a certain future in the academy, or a life of freedom, but an uncertain future outside. Riley suddenly fell silent, thinking for a moment. Then she looked up and said, Then the 2 of them walked together down the academy hallway. Grim, with its arms crossed, walked behind, saying the withdrawal process only takes less than 3 minutes. Riley, holding the book and walking ahead, turned her face and said, "It's just filling out papers." Suddenly a question arose in Riley's mind. She asked, "By the way, am I really the only one who can see you?" Grim wore. Then she recalled the scene when she was in the library and asked an upperclassman, "Can't you see him causing Grim to freeze and then say you're acting very suspiciously?" Grim explained, "Well, this form is for communicating with contractors anyway. My true form is a Grimoa." Grim put its hands behind its head and looked up at the sky, saying, "But it's still a bit disappointing." Riley, not understanding its words, turned and asked what Grim replied. "There are many benefits you can get in Reincarnated Academy." A series of items that looked like jewelry appeared, such as mirrors, brooches, and plates. Keys, bottles of perfume. Grim explained, like special items that can be obtained through battles or medicinal herbs given to top students. Riley, hearing about such good privileges at the academy, turned to look at Grim with a resentful gaze and said, "Why are you only telling me now? You should have told me that earlier." Grim stood behind, arms crossed, leaning down to tease Riley. "So are you regretting dropping out now?" Riley glanced at Grim and said, "No, that's not it." Then Riley pointed straight ahead, looked at Grim and said, "Ket, right across from the main gate. Now we have to go back." Grim glanced at Riley with a puzzled look and said, What are you talking about?" Riley, confused, looked at Grim and said, "The items and medicinal herbs, weren't you suggesting we should steal them?" Grim's expression stiffened, its mouth agape, not understanding what Riley meant. Riley stood in front of Grim, raised a hand, and said, "You said that with my talent and your guidance, I would gain tremendous power." Grim replied, "That's right." Riley continued, "So if I stayed in Reincarnated, I would also be able to obtain them." Right after hearing those words, many question marks appeared above Grim's head. Riley, with a cheerful expression, clenched one fist and smiled, saying, "Well then, that's not stealing. I'm just taking what's rightfully mine." Grim thought to itself, her way of thinking is a bit strange. The 2 of them then went to another place in the academy. Grim walked behind Riley, looking at her with a suspicious expression, and said, "How did you find this emergency exit?" Riley walked ahead, placing a hand on the wall, and said, "It all depends on my specialized knowledge." Suddenly, Riley stopped in front of the path ahead. Grim, who was following, saw her standing still and was confused. Ahead was a path, but there were two forks. Riley said, "There are two paths." Grim asked, "Do you know which way to go?" Riley replied, "No." Grim quickly pointed one hand up confidently and said, "All right, then I'll teach you a technique here." Riley looked at Grim and asked a technique. Grim gave an example of a group of mages using magic to find their way, then explained a spell to find the way, usually called a guiding spell. Riley said, "Oh, if it's that, I already learned it at Rennell." Grim said, "Then use it." Riley closed her eyes and bright spots began to appear around her. Riley used both hands to cast magic. A ball appeared between her palms. She closed her eyes and chanted. The magic ball in her hand grew larger and larger. A magic circle appeared under Riley's feet. She held her hand straight out in front of her and said loudly, "Guiding spell." Blue light flew high, illuminating the entire area. That light illuminated everywhere, revealing a trap. Then it shone through a pit full of thorns. "Finally, a dark dungeon," Riley said, "on the left path. There are about 3 traps, and the right path is a dead end. We should go left." Riley kept her hand out in front of her and asked, "How is it?" Grim stood behind, leaning back and rubbing its chin, saying, "Not bad, very balanced and all good, but—" Riley remained standing there, holding the same pose as before. Grim approached and stood next to Riley. It also held one hand straight out, looking down, and said, "It's too mediocre and inefficient." It turned to look at Riley, pointed, and raised one eyebrow, saying, "Don't be limited by ordinary thoughts. You are much more than them. Try a different approach." It pointed at Riley's hand and said, instead of releasing a bunch of mana in one direction, it used both hands to spread Riley's mana, releasing arms in 2 different directions, saying, "Scatter your mana." A powerful blue stream of mana erupted fiercely. Riley stood under the magic circle, her expression surprised. As she looked up at the sky, she raised both hands to the sky, releasing mana. Grim said, "In many directions." Grim continued, focused, "This is just the beginning." Riley looked at the powerful stream of mana, suddenly widening her eyes. Riley's magic light shot up at the wall. Then it shot at the surrounding leaves. Grim said, "Focus all your attention on those mana particles. Track the mana particles you've released one by one." Riley followed Grim's words, closed her eyes, and began to sense her surroundings. Grim continued, "Now visualize the very word Riley's mana spread out powerfully and brightly." A map began to appear in Riley's mind. Then she opened her eyes wide and said, "I can see it." Then the blue sky turned golden. Sunset shone on the water on which a large ship was leaving the island. In the satchel filled with bottles of various sizes were also scrolls. Riley and Grim stood on the ship admiring the scenery. Grim looked at Riley and said, "Well done, Riley." Riley looked down at the bag in her hand and asked, "Really?" Grim said, "Yeah, for the first time." That was good. Grim and Riley stood watching the brilliant sunset. Grim said, "Now it's time to say goodbye to this place." It turned its head, its eyes dazed. Grim thought finally, "I've escaped this damn place after 300 years in that Rennell Mitt library." Its gaze began to drift towards Riley. Grim leaned against the railing of the ship, looking at Riley, and said, "Let's make one thing clear." Riley looked at it and asked what. Grim's gaze gradually sharpened, saying, "Riley." Then it reconsidered the things Riley had done, like breaking into the library, even leaving the academy without hesitation, saying she had risked her life to find it, and even dropped out of the academy just to learn magic from it. Grim's dark gaze turned towards Riley and said, "Tell me, what is your real purpose?" Thousands of sparks were released downwards. The falling sparks set people's houses on fire. Riley's uncle still stood there, refusing to leave. Everyone quickly evacuated and left. Riley turned her head to look back. Her Uncle Robert was still there. Her uncle only urged her quickly to run. Grim's words seemed to pull her back to reality. "Riley, why do you want to learn magic from me?" Riley said nothing. She replied, "I have a goal that I need to achieve by becoming stronger." Grim asked, "Is it for revenge?" Riley frankly admitted yes. Grim really wanted to ask who she was fighting against and how. But prying into someone else's past pain wasn't a good thing, furthermore. Especially someone with a past as unfortunate as Riley's. He sighed, thinking we've only just met anyway. There's plenty of time to learn about each other. Riley spoke up. Aren't you going to ask anything, Grimoa? He was surprised, huh? What Riley pointed and said, isn't that your only purpose for teaching me magic? Her voice was full of doubt, the purpose to teach me magic. Actually, the reason Grim taught magic, the reason he shared everything without hesitation, was because Grim brushed it off. Does that even matter? It's simply because I do it for fun. Grim explained, thinking, what's fun about being a magic book? I just enjoy teaching magic to others. Riley nodded. I understand. In the room, Riley was curious. By the way, you left the academy in such a hurry. Grim asked you received a letter of introduction from the professor, right? Riley confirmed. He then suggested, could you take it out and show it to me? Riley obediently took it out. It's just a letter of introduction to the Erantes Tower. Grim was surprised. Erantes. He also didn't know where this was. Actually, Grim had hoped for a letter of introduction to one of the 5 magic towers, or at least a famous magic tower. If I don't know it, maybe it was built during the 300 years I was locked in that library. A tower is a place to build a mage's connections. The position of an archmage is not something you can easily achieve. What better place than a magic tower to build political foundations? Grim was angry, but why haven't I ever heard of this name? Riley whispered. Magic book, sir. Riley reminded him the Erantes Tower is one of the 5 royal magic towers. Grim was stunned. What? Riley pulled out a book to learn more about the Erantes Tower. You need to know about Erantes, its founder and owner. She opened to the correct printed page and pointed, here it is. Grim wondered, why did this book take a picture of him when he was lying in a hospital bed? They should have taken a picture of him in his golden age. Riley retorted, but this is a picture of him in his golden age. Grim was completely taken aback. She added, this is a portrait of him painted when he was 40 years old. Grim asked, again, did he die young? Riley denied he's still alive. Grim hesitated, but this portrait was painted 3 years ago. Riley confirmed, that's right, and he's still alive to this day. He was curious, so is he a half-elf? Or a relic? Riley denied, of course not. He's not a half-elf. Then he observed again and nodded. Well, yeah, a half-elf wouldn't look like that. Riley reminded him, that's rude, you know? She defended him anyway. He only reached the level of a high-level mage, but Iran has already achieved greater feats than others. In fact, the student community has also discussed whether to give him the title of Archmage or not. You can see that he has single-handedly raised the status of the Erantes Magic Tower. Grim still thought, but this sounds really absurd. 300 years everyone hears is a long time, but for him being stuck in it was like being stuck in an endless period. But that time wasn't long enough to change the Royal Magic Towers, something he definitely didn't know had happened. The book recorded documents about the immortal Iran, which that mortal dreamed of continuing, but could not become the lifelong aspiration of the supreme mage named Jan Erantes. Grim suddenly realized something. Jan Erantes came from the immortal realm. He was the mage who elevated the status of the royals, and for hundreds of years. He had fulfilled the dying wish of his teacher, Mata Fa Herrick. Riley was curious. Grim took her outside and then introduced, It was a bustling place, a busy port with many ships. This is the royal capital. Grim saw Riley's reaction and was a little surprised. Is this your first time here? She admitted. This is the first time I've been here during such a pleasant day since the gang incident. Grim suggested, we've come all this way, would you like to take a look around? He offered a local specialty of the island unicorn skewers. Riley took it, and was surprised. The capital is really strange. They even sell skewers of mythical creatures. Grim calmly said, it's just called unicorn skewers. It's no different from lamb skewers. She froze. Her eyes drooping with disappointment. I thought it was called unicorn skewers because it was made from real unicorns. Grim was exasperated. What are you talking about? Riley decided, I feel like I'm being cheated. I need a refund. Grim just urged, eat all of that. The delicious skewers were swallowed whole by Riley. While eating, she noticed something. That gaze held a hint of curiosity. The two of them stopped. They were statues. Riley knew they were the 5 great mages. They were geniuses with innate talent and a passion for magic. Grim scoffed, geniuses, that sounds like nonsense. They're just a bunch of idiots. To him, they weren't people who gave up easily. Grim recalled, remember before you asked me why I teach magic? Riley nodded. Yes. He explained, to nurture the contractors into mages. And another reason is to take revenge on those who turned me into these pages. Grim's gaze was momentarily sad. My disciples have suffered a lot because of that. Mata even tried to perform a revival ceremony for me, but she failed. He chuckled, but as I recall, she didn't have any disciples at all. Riley was confused, so Jan Irantes lied. Grim gritted his teeth. That's right. He beckoned, let's go to the Irantes magic tower. I cannot forgive anyone who dares to impersonate my disciple's disciple. Riley closed her eyes, determined. Promise me I'll deliver Jan Irantes to you, Grimoa. In exchange, help me with my revenge too. Grimoa smiled brightly. He bumped fists, I promise. From that moment on, Riley and Grim promised to help each other take revenge. That's how their story began. Grim recalled that book was me after being reborn as a Grimoa. I was stolen from a rundown shop by a boy named Fendo, who lived day by day wandering through the slums. The boy was very eager to learn once he asked, what about Grimoire? Does it originate from the term grimoire? Grim interrupted. Just call me Grimoa, okay? Fendo still said, you don't like that either, okay? All right, I'll still call you Grimoire. That innocent boy was my first contractor. At that time, he was just silent. To him, you were confused right after becoming a magic book. Fendo was like a light. I wanted to repay him. That was my greatest desire. The naive boy asked, is this right? I can't see anything. Grim reassured. Wait a little longer. Good, slowly guide that energy into your mana heart. Fendo exclaimed. I think I feel a little itchy. His face contorted and he cried out, it seems to be quite effective, but it hurts a little. Grim reassured, it's all right. Just be patient and keep going. Fendo sensed it's too hot. Grimoire, it's starting to get hot. Grim was a little annoyed. Oh, for heaven's sake, stop complaining. You can only endure this much if I'm going to pass on my magical knowledge to you, right? Hurry up and continue. Fendo panicked. Grimoire, it's hot. It's too hot. A shrill scream rang out. Grim stopped him. Hey, what's the rush if you keep rushing like that? Before he could finish speaking, Fendo coughed up a mouthful of blood. Grim froze. He stood rooted to the spot. A soft calling voice, Fendo. In the carriage. Grim sat pensively looking outside. He spoke up to Riley. She nodded yes. Grim hesitated slightly. Since the bond of authority was established, Grim and Riley had a certain level of mutual understanding, adding a bit of voice through mana. It would become their own telepathy. From then on, they always communicated with each other telepathically. Grim thought no one in the world would think of making unicorn skewers, would they? Riley challenged. Want to bet? He quickly agreed. All right then. Riley was serious. Suddenly stopping. No, don't actually do it. Its face was cold. I was caught. It's a convenient technique in many ways. Riley wondered. But Grimoa, why didn't you show me this simple skill sooner? Grim mumbled. Well, the truth is, I find Riley a little cute when she whispers in front of others. If I said that, she'd be furious, so he chose silence. Riley put on a scary face anyway. Thanks to the emotional bond, I know all your true feelings. Grim changed the subject anyway. If the Irantes Tower is one of the 5 great towers, there will be a selection test. You shouldn't underestimate this. Riley wondered why. He explained the 5 great towers don't want potential students like you. They only want fully accomplished mages. The selection test has a very strict talent recruitment system. For Riley to be selected for the Irantes Magic Tower, she would have to stand out and demonstrate her power among countless other mages. Of course, there were mages who had spent their entire lives preparing for this test. That's why it was called the Graveyard of Geniuses. Grim decided, but we will participate in this test. Riley was surprised. What? Her face was a little worried. You want me to achieve the title of intermediate or high-level mage in just 6 months? That's impossible. Grim was certain it's absolutely possible, I guarantee it. I'm very confident that with my help you can pass the test within 6 months. Grim said excitedly, I've prepared this. It was already dark. The coachman was bewildered. Excuse me, does it really have to be this place? It's completely covered in barbed wire fences. Grim confirmed, yes, that's right, let us down. He introduced, now this will be where you'll train for the next 6 months. This is also where my former disciple used to live. Riley wondered if he was your former disciple. He must be over 3,000 years old, right? I can't believe he's still alive. Grim replied somewhat vaguely. He's no longer alive, but he's not exactly dead either. She was confused. Grim said one of my disciples turned into a lich. Only a single archmage can become a lich. When he was alive, he was that archmage. Riley looked around. So where is he now? It's just trees and more trees around here. Grim crossed its arms. I don't know. You have to find out for yourself. Think of it as an exploration. Riley was bewildered. What do you mean? Grim challenged those who can't find him don't deserve to learn magic. She was strangely bewildered. He stopped, put his hands on his hips and asked, "You know how to find something like that, don't you?" Riley affirmed, of course. Finding the lich's hidden lair somewhere in this place was the first step of the training Riley began to search. Magic was released, it was guiding her. Riley was annoyed. There are so many interfering spells, this is outrageous. Illusory worlds, distorted magic, hundreds of complex magic formulas obstructed her senses. Riley slowly sensed. The lich observed from afar that blonde girl seems quite confident. Even a high-level mage would take a year to find my hiding place. Does she really think an apprentice like her can find me? To Grim, there was nothing Riley couldn't be proud of. Riley's affinity with mana was at the level of a true prodigy. Riley walked over to report found him. The lich panicked. "What? How could you find him so quickly?" He coughed dryly. "Slow down. Wait a minute." His voice was hoarse. "I was just trying to act cool, and now I've lost my voice." After a moment of self-reassurance, the lich regained his composure. All right, I'm better now, he. He praised. "That was really fast. How did you find me so quickly? Normal people would take at least 2 years." Grim leaned closer. The fastest record before was 4 years, right? But Riley had overcome the obstacle. In less than 10 minutes, she tracked a series of interfering and searching spells cast by someone. A method that only works for those with a high affinity for mana. The lich was curious. "Did you actually reverse my interference spell?" Riley admitted. "Yes," the lich exclaimed. "You're a monster." The two of them were led inside by the lich. As they walked, Grim observed his strange hobbies haven't changed at all. He spoke up honestly. "Is this really a place to hide?" The lich waved it off. "Come on, my room is this way." He brought out some cups of tea. Riley sat silently. Grim reminded, "Hey, hide your aura. My disciple feels uncomfortable." The lich confessed, Sorry, it's because I haven't met anyone in a long time, so I still can't adapt." Betraying the laws of the celestial realm and being cursed by the mortal realm. "As a necromantic being, I can't carry the energy of black magic after adjusting." He asked, "Is it better now?" Riley nodded. "It's better now." Grim glanced over. "Now, do you understand why I have to teach a new disciple instead of keeping a lich by my side?" Riley sipped her tea. "Yeah, I think I understand actually. The lich's foundation is black magic, something forbidden by the Empire followers of evil gods necromancers. Black mages. There's even a legitimate conference for practitioners of this. There's a specialized organization that punishes them. Their name is the Inquisition. Everything related to demons is a target for punishment." Grim interrupted. "This isn't the most important topic right now. How have you been all this time? Has anything serious happened?" The lich frankly said, "Well, that might be the case. You see, I've been here for 2,000 years since becoming a lich." Grim reconsidered. 2,000 years? I thought it was only 300 years. The lich laughed. "I was really worried because Master hadn't come to visit for almost 300 years. Something big must have happened." He recounted, "I've been studying necromancy, black magic, and curse magic. Occasionally Master's disciples would bring themselves here. Time really flies, huh? A few years ago, I had to deal with some adventurers who somehow found my hiding place." Grim was surprised adventurers broke in here. The lich confirmed, "That's right. I don't know how they found out. Maybe it was just luck. They mistook this place for a dark magic area created by the aura. They attacked as soon as they saw me, so I was forced to fight back." Seeing him spill his tea, Grim had to remind, Hey, the water's spilling everywhere." He inquired, "So what happened to those adventurers?" The lich honestly replied, "Because I'm short on manpower. I'm turning them into slaves." He pointed into the distance, showing off, "They're over here." An underling stepped forward. The lich introduced, "Say hello. This is my right-hand man, Jeremy." Riley took the teacup. Thank you." The other two were completely stunned. Grim roared, "He's one of the 4 knights, this idiotic fool, and you dare call him an ordinary adventurer." How could an ordinary adventurer become a knight? Riley realized something. Master, this person. Grim was curious. "How do you know this person?" Riley explained, the sword on Jeremy's belt, the golden emblem on the hilt. "He's the captain of the Inquisition. I heard he went missing 5 years ago, and they're still searching and investigating, so it turns out he was here." Grim growled. "Damn it." The lich defended himself. "I really didn't know. I just wanted to fight back against the adventurers who broke into my hiding place." After all, a lich's mind is usually slightly influenced by black magic. "I usually come to visit him to check on his mental state and readjust it. It seems that during my 300-year absence, the reins have loosened a bit." He sighed. The lich changed the subject. Ahem, even though your disciple is still just an apprentice, you still brought her here. Is there a reason for that? Grim introduced, if it's this kid, she can definitely handle your training. The lich assessed. I think so too. He recalled, do you remember your previous disciple Matafa Herrick? The lich recognized, that silver-haired girl. Grim said there's something related to those bastards. The lich understood the issue, so there's some imposter posing as Matafa Herrick's disciple, and you're planning to enter the magic tower to take revenge on that person. Grim admitted that's right. The lich was curious why go through the trouble of entering the Orontes tower. Wouldn't it be easier to just go to another magic tower and control everything? Places like the 5 great towers have already been overshadowed by Orontes. Grim stammered, obviously doing that would be much easier and simpler, but his expression was strange, slowly destroying it from the inside. Sounds more interesting, doesn't it? The lich scoffed. Get out of here, what kind of perverted reason is that? Grim retorted. Isn't that something someone like you should say? The lich turned to ask, Hey Riley, what do you think? If you listen to Master, you'll be in even more danger. Riley replied differently. I think it's stimulating and interesting. The lich trailed off. I see you're perverted too. All right then, let's start training now. Riley's eyes widened at this place. The lich seemed to guess and said, The flow of magic is very strange, isn't it? It took me a long time to create this with your master. Half a year before the selection exam is too short for an apprentice to catch up with a high-level mage. Even if Riley is a genius, what if we had 4 times that amount of time? What if we had 2 years? Riley exclaimed, This place is amazing. Grim said creating this place was quite difficult. He emphasized, now you have 2 advantages over other mages. First, extraordinary physical ability due to your background with the Thieves Guild, and second, a naturally superior mana affinity. From now on, we will only focus our power on those 2 strengths and a single type of magic. He asked, Do you know what Dispel is? Riley vaguely replied, Isn't it a spell that dispels other magic? A type of magic that disperses the opponent's magic without defense? Grim nodded. Exactly. Dispel is a type of counterattack magic used to dispel other spells. That means it makes the fireball flying towards us disappear into thin air. Now do you understand why I asked you to train here? Riley knew yes. You want me to use Dispel to prevent opponents from casting spells during the selection exam, and then use my extraordinary physical skills for hand-to-hand combat, right? Grim agreed. Exactly, you're right. No matter how high the opponent's magic power is compared to yours, just make sure they can't use magic, and that's enough. The lich was unconvinced. That's so underhanded. Grim said, But that's the only way to deal with the mages in the selection exam. Then Lich, I'll leave this to you. The lich agreed, yes. Riley spoke up. Wait a minute. But it's too late. Riley panicked. Wait, not yet. Are you planning to start right away? You haven't even told me about the Dispel spell yet. The lich asked. Didn't you learn it at Enrollment? She retorted. That's advanced magic taught in the 3rd year. The lich chuckled. Is that so? All the better. You'll get the hang of it after a few tries. Riley was surprised. What? Grim remained silent. So did the lich. Grim wondered, wouldn't your skill set develop more after each beating because you wouldn't want to be hit again? The lich chimed in. That's right. Grim was surprised, but why hasn't this kid shown any progress? The lich didn't know well. Remembering a bit when she was attacked, Riley had no reaction other than to run. That completely stunned the lich. She hasn't made any progress because she ran for a whole hour. He wondered, is there something wrong with my teaching method? Grim recalled that it had been 3 days since he met Riley. Although not long, it was enough for him to recognize her personality. Riley has a high sense of pride. Should I say she doesn't want to reveal her weaknesses? She hates failure. For members of the gang, failure wasn't an option. I wonder if the psychological pressure has affected her. Perhaps so. Because she's afraid of failure, she thought there was no other choice but to run away, didn't she? Riley woke up and denied, No, that's not it. I only ran because I was afraid of getting hurt by the magic. The lich scratched his head. Really, is that so, Master? He smiled. Forget what I just said. Grim asked, What you don't know isn't the principle, but the method, right? Riley admitted that's right. The method to detect the opponent's spell, the method to delve into the source of the spell, the method to delve into the magic. Grim wondered, You don't know the specific steps to dispel the spell, do you? But you know what? I've already told you everything you need to know. Think about it carefully. Just now you were a little flustered because you were about to be attacked, but now you can calmly think, can't you? The lich began to attack. Now Riley was calm. You said you've told me everything I need to know. Grim admitted that's right. Riley was bewildered, but the only things you taught me were the guiding spell and telepathic communication, so you mean I should use these two things? Grim agreed. That's right. Riley lowered her eyes. I understand I won't ask any more questions. Instead, just as you said, don't be limited by ordinary thoughts. You are much more than them. So try a different approach. As Grimoa advised, I will open my own path, a maze-like flow of mana. She gradually closed her eyes, then opened them. The guiding spell was cast. Riley recalled, that's right, we experienced the maze twice. Once was under the Etermis corridor, as well as the path leading to the Lich's hiding place. Grim advised, I see now you have to decipher those magics one by one. Riley subtly did it so that others couldn't notice. Like when using telepathy to talk secretly. Riley succeeded, she blocked it. Grim walked over, congratulations, you succeeded. Riley's hand trembled. How long has it been? Grim replied, 4 hours. Riley sighed in relief, so in reality it's only been 4 hours. Grim was blunt again, no 4 hours in real time, that means you struggled with that low-level magic ball for 16 hours. Hearing this, she felt like collapsing. I can't believe time really flies that fast, Grim reminded, from now on, everything will always be like this. She reassured herself, but everything will be all right. I think I've grasped a part of it now. Grim was excited, well, that's good. Time flowed relentlessly. September, when autumn grew cold and the sun set early. The time the magical world paid the least attention. Every day, Riley still trained diligently without stopping. Finally, the selection announcement for the 5 Great Magic Towers exam took place. Riley now had excellent control over the magic balls the Lich created. Riley could easily dispel them. The Lich praised, that's a flawless dispel spell, without the slightest error. After our 6 months of training, which felt like 2 years, it's finally coming to an end. Grim assured, at this level, you can handle even an intermediate mage without any problems. Riley was excited, really. He nodded firmly. Really. All right then, everyone quickly disperse and rest here, the Lich said cheerfully. Everyone has worked hard. I'll tell Jeremy to prepare a delicious dinner. Grim praised the Lich. You've worked hard too. The Lich was embarrassed. It was nothing really. Grim thought, I think just polishing her offensive magic a bit more and it'll be perfect. He noticed Riley's expression. What's wrong? Riley hesitated. This is the Lich's world domination plan. Step 1. Create 4 knights. Step 2. Synthesize chimeras capable of using magic. The two of them read it and were dumbfounded. Grim turned purple with anger. He asked, what is this you plan to rule the world while I was away? The Lich protested. No, that's not it. In his mind, he was certain he had burned it. Grim questioned, what do you mean that's not it? Are you crazy? Do you really want this country to perish? After all, he admitted, all right, I did plan to rule the world. I only intended to take a small city in the east to build my own city. Are you satisfied now? He hit his head in frustration. The Lich shouted, what a Lich like me has to have some grand ambition, right? Grim just said nonchalantly, I think this guy's about to cause some trouble again, isn't he? No, hasn't he already caused trouble? He asked again, what's wrong? I was just saying, why are you reacting like that? The Lich stammered. He quickly denied, I haven't caused any trouble. Hey, during the Lich's world domination attempt here in the northern region of the kingdom, there were also some others plotting a scheme. In the north of the empire, on the road to the mage's city of Windom, covered in white snow, were the figures of those lying in wait for plump prey. One of them spoke up when he saw the prey had arrived. Boss over there. He continued, that little girl's outfit looks expensive at a glance, right? The leader, seeing this, added, her gait is pathetic, and she shows no signs of vigilance. She's completely unprepared. After observing for a long time, they took out their bows ready to aim and fire. The leader feigned pity. She shouldn't be walking alone in a place like this. Immediately after, they all shot arrows towards the girl in red, shouting, die. The arrow pierced straight into her back. She fell down, fresh blood spreading. The bad guys, seeing this, rushed out. One of them flattered the leader that was a beautiful shot, boss. They went there to rummage through the valuable jewelry on the girl's body, astonished. How much is all this worth, boss? She has a lot of expensive stuff. A voice rang out from behind them. You won't find things like this in dungeons. The leader, still engrossed in admiring the jewelry, chuckled mockingly. What a steal. But the subordinate had looked up, recognized the danger, and hesitantly warned boss. Hearing this, he irritably frowned and turned around. I'm busy getting the loot. What is it? The blonde subordinate pointed ahead, his face darkening. I think you should really turn around and look over there, boss. It turned out to be the girl in the red clothes they had shot dead. She was still alive and well with a terrifying expression. The leader was also bewildered Suddenly the subordinates behind screamed, "Boss, the treasure is gone," and the corpse too. Only then did the leader realize the immediate danger. She's a mage. Immediately they stirred and grabbed their weapons. The leader ordered everyone, draw your swords quick. He was still very arrogant, shouting loudly, "We have a chance, there are more of us than her." The girl in front rested her chin on her hand, extremely calm. The leader picked up his bow and arrow, mocking the girl. She's just a well-bred young lady. As soon as he finished speaking, a flash of power quickly swept past, turning their faces pale. They cried out in pain, looking at their severed arms and groaning. The girl gradually approached. She walked past the arms that had fallen on the ground, staining the white snow red. She slowly walked over and used her hand to lift the leader's chin. His face was now filled with extreme fear. As for the girl, her eyes were full of murderous intent. She taunted, "If you mess with a mage, you have to pay the price right." Well, the end of a band of thieves is only death, when he dared to oppose Becky, who was famously ruthless. Moments later, a group of people passed by. An old man standing there saw the terrifying scene and spoke up this. The person said, "That's the high-level mage Reincarnated." He leaned on his staff, looking around at the aftermath of a mage. It seems there was a battle with bandits. He walked closer to the leader's corpse and examined it. This battle happened about 5 hours ago. Calling it a one-sided massacre would be more accurate. The horseman panicked. "So what should we do, sir?" Reincarnated replied, "Just ignore it and keep going. We can report to the guards when we reach the city." Saying that, he walked towards the inside of the carriage. "As long as I'm here, there won't be any problems." Seeing this, the horseman felt much more at ease. "Understood. I will trust you, mage." He went inside and sat quietly. Suddenly, he raised his eyes and stared intently at someone. It was Riley. She was holding the book and sitting opposite Reincarnated. He spoke up, "Hey, kid." She turned her face, confirming he was calling her. He added, "Hey, kid. That's right. What's your reason for visiting Windom?" She replied, "I came here to participate in the selection exam for the 5 Great Towers." He was silent for a moment, then reminded Riley, "That's just suicide. Didn't you see the massacre that just happened? The selection exams attract all sorts of mages. Reincarnated continued, "Among them are madmen who see the exam as a legitimate opportunity to kill. At the very least, you should have survival skills to protect yourself if you value your life." He still calmly reminded her having a lower rank at such a young age is commendable, but the tower selection exam is more brutal than you can imagine. Instead, why don't you continue practicing at a school in Windom? Riley replied with a calm expression, "I appreciate your sincere advice, but I've already made up my mind." Reincarnated was silent, looking a little surprised at the child's determination. But then he lowered his head, thinking to himself, "It seems there's another promising candidate who will meet an unfortunate end." Then both of them fell silent, not saying anything more. Grim finally spoke up. "Why is that old man so talkative?" She felt the same way indeed. After quite a long time, they arrived. Grim said happily, "We're here." Riley also liked the place. "This place is really fascinating. This is the first time I've seen such an advanced city. This is Windom, a cold city where it snows all year round. It's the center of magical engineering." They walked everywhere, on the streets, in the sky. Strange devices were probing something. The quiet atmosphere suddenly erupted with a loud noise. People around shouted, "What's going on?" One of them replied, "My neighbor Roy failed another experiment again." Grim observed the surroundings, remarking, "It seems the surroundings have changed, but the atmosphere remains the same. Have you found the way?" Yet Riley was still intently observing the map, examining it. She looked intently, but still had no results. "I don't know." Grim frowned, really annoyed. "The city has changed so much that I can't recognize the way anymore." He was puzzled. Why isn't the location of the selection exam organizing body on the map from a distance? Someone was secretly observing the two of them. At this moment, Riley was casting the wayfinding spell. In just a moment, she roamed all over the city with magic without expending any effort. Riley spoke up. "There are 10 locations that are said to be the exam organizing offices. All of them are relatively clean buildings with limited public access. The problem is, they could be branches of academies or intermediate-level research laboratories." Grim continued, "I should have followed that troublesome old man if I had known this." They recalled Garantelban's words reminding them, "I've seen many mages like you." That's what they usually said after considering everything. Riley also felt regretful. I should have stuck with that mage even if I had to endure his nagging. I didn't expect a magic book to be so reliable. Grimm explained irritably honestly, who would have thought Windom would change so much in 300 years? Riley immediately retorted, do you think nothing changes in that amount of time? While the two of them were talking, the person who had been following them approached smiling. Hello. Are you two new here? Grimm carefully observed his appearance, a plump man in a robe active in Windom, a faint display of magical energy wandering around him. He cheerfully stated his intention. Usually newcomers to Windom have a lot of trouble finding the administration office. At this moment, Grimm realized this guy is a novice mage. He continued, wayfinding spells are useless here. The residual magical energy from experiments and research has interfered with them. Hearing this, Riley wondered, so is there another way to find it? He pretended to hesitate, well, perhaps.